Yo, 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 what's up, everybody? It's We Talking About Sports. It's Tuesday. We're creeping up on 8:30 here, but it's We Talking About Sports, and we're here to give you guys a little waiver wire rundown, recap Sunday a little bit, give you all our quick thoughts on what happened, and then, of course, kind of break down what's going on the waiver wires, because, you can make or break your season early on here on the waivers if you hit on the right guy. Ben, Ron, how's it going? How was y'all's weekends? Are y'all still alive betting wise? How were y'all's teams over the weekend? I know we got some W's. What are y'all's thoughts? How y'all doing?
Shit, I'm great, man. I'm great. I did go 1-2 in fantasy. One of the leagues that I won, I thought that I was gonna lose, and I ended up winning with Fred Warner because the defensive league. I wasn't too happy with what my stars did, but I think that was something going on around the league. A lot of big names did not have a lot of fantasy big weeks. A lot of unknown guys came out and showed out. And those are the guys that we're going to target here on the waiver wire. This is what the show's about. Catch it every Tuesday. We'll bring it to you guys. WTBS on the wire.
What's up, man? How's it going?
No, I mean, I'm trying to share the link here on Facebook.
Same.
All good.
Dude, I mean, it was a tough week in fantasy. I'm not gonna lie, I got maybe 2 dubs, but Chris Olave really killed me this week, man. I mean, the game script for the Saints, they just blew the Panthers completely out. So fantasy was a little tough, but Texans got a big win against the Colts.
Yeah. Turned into a tight game there at the end.
Really tight game, really big play, though. One of those big plays. I mean, I'm not going to say it felt like a playoff game, but those two teams, they're already division rivals, and there's been a lot of jawing back and forth between the linebackers and C.J. Stroud. So it was something that people were really looking forward to, and it was a show. It was a show, or it was a movie, like the kids say nowadays. But
Anthony Richardson showed the fuck out.
Came down to that third down conversion, I think, from C.J. Stroud and Nico Collins. Great throw. And Ron, you're right. Anthony Richardson, in terms of fantasy, I don't know if completely answered everybody's questions, but I mean, he showed out. He was quarterback 2, I think, on the week behind Josh Allen. So Anthony Richardson, good first week, got in the end zone. Helped out with one of our bets there at the end of the show on best bets. I think I had him anytime touchdown. Fourth quarter, got a little touchdown, got a little shaky there at the end, but I'll take it. But guys, speaking of week 1, let's get to some quick takeaways. Either some of the bigger stories that happened across the league, in our opinion, that we just want to touch base on before we get into the the meat and potatoes of the show, the waiver wire, the real reason why we're here. And just starting left to right. Baker Mayfield and the Bucks, they were kind of slept on this offseason. They lost their offensive coordinator, the guy who was given a lot of credit for Baker's resurgence. Mike Evans had another great year, started the year off right up against the Washington Commanders. A lot of people were excited for Jaden Daniels, looked good in the preseason. They were a trendy dog. The money was going their way for a little while before it ended up tilting back in the Bucks' favor there before kickoff. But Ben, or actually, you know what? Let me throw it to Ron, because Ron, I think Baker was your must start. I think you were throwing him out. He was your quarterback. What was your thoughts there going up against the Commanders? Is this sustainable for your Baker Mayfield?
Bro, you got to be throwing it out to me the way Baker was throwing it out to Mike Evans. That's what needs to happen. We need to put Ben on the back seat real quick. Baker absolutely showed out. He was one of my must starts. If you caught our show Monday morning, I told you to put him in your lineup, and he showed the hell out for me and everybody else who took my advice. They routed the Commanders 37-20, and they spoiled another quarterback's debut, which is Ben's guy, Jaden Daniels. Regardless of it, Baker had 4 touchdowns. I believe that it was him having Godwin back in the slot for me is key, because it opens one-on-one matchups for Killer Mike. All right, they don't really have a third down back either that's going to take away a lot of plays. A lot of plays where he's going to want to throw the ball. He's always been a gunslinger, and with no running back like that, even more chances he's going to get to throw the ball. And this week, real quick, they have Detroit. If for whatever reason they fall behind, guess what's going to happen? Baker's going to be letting it sling again. So a real quick fantasy comparison for you, Ben. I believe Daniels is owned in over 90% of leagues, and Baker right now is owned in – actually, we're going to go to him to get the full stat on it. But regardless of it, like Roland has up here, Baker and the Bucks were balling, and I see more of it to come this season.
Ben, what are your thoughts on the Bucks?
Daniels did have a top 5 finish as far as QBs go, I believe, due to the rushing yards. Not bad for his debut. But no, Baker, I mean, it's something that we were talking about offline in one of our group chats was about Deshaun Watson. And I was kind of telling y'all that when he was with the Texans, he had a bunch of aura and swag. And Baker seems to be that same type of guy, but he's more of like a football guy, one of those trenches type of dudes, but really, plays with his heart on his sleeve. So for him, dude, I mean, we saw OBJ's dad making videos of OBJ being wide open with the Browns. I mean, look at the situation that the Browns are in now. They're in a make or break year with their franchise quarterback, and Baker has revived the Bucks. I mean, they're a high-powered offense. Last week, when Ron said he was must start and said that last year he finished as a top 10 QB, it surprised the hell out of me. But I mean, he is one of those guys that goes out there and he goes out on his shield, slinging it. Mike Evans, signed the contract and stayed there. I think that was going to also be a big thing on how his year was going to go this year. We thought that Mike Evans had one foot out the door with the Bucks. Ends up coming back, 2 touchdowns, clear red zone target, and then Godwin, bunch of fantasy value on Godwin where he was drafted.
Sure.
Yep.
Like he's a pretty much you can flex him every week type of guy, I think. And he was being drafted, late in the draft, 7th, 8th round. So yeah, the Bucks offense, they were up and firing, shootout, but they're gonna be down a lot. Like Ron mentioned, they got the Lions this coming week. Look for them to be passing the ball a lot. So yeah, Baker's gonna be a possible, stardom kind of every week guy, dude.
Yeah. I think Baker definitely has, in terms of fantasy finish, quarterback 1 potential in terms of finishing in the top 12, being considered a QB1. Definitely think he can finish toward there in the top 10 where he did last year. And, it's the Bucks' nature. It's part of their, offensive scheme to air it out the way that they do and go vertical. Him and Mike Evans in his 11th season is just doing it again and again and again. And, Baker's the perfect guy to get it to him. I think he's playing in a good system. They really don't have a workhorse running back. Rashad White is like a kind of like a volume-based guy, doesn't really get a lot, although I think they had a rookie that showed some. Bucky Irving, I think is his name, had a couple good runs. But yeah, I mean, it's all set up nicely for Baker to continue performing. So yeah, just wanted to give some props to the Bucks. A lot of people were writing them off in the South. Wanted to hand it off to Atlanta, including myself, but it might not be going down that way. I think the Bucks might have something to say about that.
Shout out Yosh in the chat. That was a sneaky survivor pick by him. He was on the Bucks.
Shout out Josh. Yeah, shout out Josh. Shout out a couple of other people on the Bucks. So kudos to you guys. And then speaking of survivor, we talked about it, going in to Sunday there at the end of the show. The Bengals early season woes continue. This loss against the Patriots, and Ron has it here down at the bottom, and Jordan Mayo's coaching debut, losing 16-10, makes them, I want to say, in Joe Burrow's tenure, 1-4 in opening season games or in season openers. And that one game that they won was an overtime victory against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So they are just known for slow starts. We should have known better before putting them on our card, Ben, and making them one of our survivor picks. But guys, are you just going to chalk this up to, hey, there's a lot of uncertainty with the contract situation with Chase, T. Higgins popped a hammy there towards the end of the week, ended up missing, there's nothing going on? Or are you more worried about this performance? Is it indicative of something more to you guys? Ben, what's your thought?
It being my survivor pick, this was on the second TV permanently, or it was on my phone. Yeah. It was on my phone. I watched the whole game, bro. So I saw what happened, and I mean, it was a fumble. It was a callback touchdown. Then it was a fumble at the 1 yard line. Then it was a fumbled punt. And then at the end of the game, 4th and 2, at their own 35 with 2:30 to go, and they punt the ball away instead of going on 4th and 2. It was the coach Taylor. I mean, I don't know about him. I know that we've given him a lot of credit, but I think it might just be one of those coaches riding the talent of a really, really good quarterback. Because it was so stupid to punt when they did in the 4th quarter, bro. They didn't even get the ball back. He punted the ball away instead of letting Joe Burrow get 2 yards or at least attempt it. It was horrible. I think that they'll be okay. It depends also on T. Higgins and how long he's out. It was a lot of Jamar Chase, and the running backs were working, but there wasn't too many other options that were getting fed a lot. So I think the Bengals will be okay. We should have seen it coming though. A lot of turmoil. A lot of, is this guy going to play? Is this guy not going to play? So we definitely should have stayed away. Just goes to tell you what we think of the Patriots. You know what I mean?
And just a lesson to be learned that, these are pro players at the end of the day, and they can sneak up and get a W on you at any moment's notice. And for those of you guys wondering, didn't watch the game, Zach Moss was a guy who walked away with the lone touchdown for that offense there towards the end. Ron, what are your thoughts on your boy Burrow and his slow starts? Are you worried? Is he just waking up, getting warmed up, shaking off the rust because he hasn't played in a little while? What are your thoughts on this performance?
He's good. He'll be good. He only lost by 6 points. With all the things that been happened, everything's like Newton's law, right? Everything that could go wrong went wrong for Cincinnati on Sunday. Even the coach, Zach Taylor. It's funny because we were talking about it at work about our Survivor Series, and I told guys, hey, we lost like 20 players or 22 entries out of the 60 that we had because they picked the Bengals. And right away, he said it and I said it. It was like the coach. The coach lost him that game, and I don't think he's that great of a coach, to be honest. Last year, to me, I love me some Joe Mixon, right? And so Joe Mixon wasn't the problem. He scored a decent amount of touchdowns last year. I think he had a game where he scored 4. But we saw what he did with the Texans the first game. Absolutely went off. So I think a lot of that has to do with coaching. Like, you have all these stars, but you can't just get them to gel. And I think that that's the problem over there in Cincinnati. And guys, next week, guess who they got on Sunday at 3:25?
Good point. The Chiefs.
Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs at Arrowhead. So things do not get easier for the Bengals this year.
Yeah, they might be staring 0-2 right in the face. So we'll see what happens with the Bengals from here, and we'll be sure to keep on talking about it. Next 2 stories, just, kind of continuing this downward trend of takeaways. Buyer's remorse for Marvin Harrison Jr., and I'm talking fantasy. He was a first-round pick in the NFL draft, and he was – a second-round pick, if you will, in terms of fantasy, depending what kind of league you're playing in. For the most part, in redraft leagues, PPR, second-round pick. Ends the game with 1 catch, I believe, for 4 yards. The clip going around the fantasy streets is the one of him breaking open there in the 4th quarter. Kyler didn't see him, ended up throwing it somewhere else. Got out targeted by Greg Dortch, who we talked about on the show on Sunday. Guys, I know, I'm pretty sure both of you guys weren't in on drafting Marvin Harrison Jr. at his ADP, but what are your thoughts for him the rest of the season? Is this a fire alarm for you? Or if you are Marvin Harrison Jr., just put yourself in those shoes. What are y'all's thoughts, panic scale 1 to 10 on this performance?
Yeah, I'll go. I mean, we have the next guy who we're going to talk about was an injury, but both of these guys were second-round picks. If you went running back in the first round, they're your wide receiver ones. And I was pitching about Olave, but Marvin Harrison didn't even have a full point. I mean, he had 1 point.
1.4 points.
Yeah.
I had him.
So, not really good. I mean, it was just, I think, I don't want to say an off game because Kyler had 16 points, at halftime. And then they kind of settled down in the second half and James Conner got going.
Yeah, he went off.
Really good call on Dortch. I mean, he saw a lot. The line was stupid. Like, that was one where you could have laddered and you would have probably hit a couple of them.
Yeah, for sure.
But I don't think you're worried about Harrison. I actually think this week is like a smash it week. Like, that bad. It's in the news. It's in the media. I think they're going to force feed him this coming week. So I think Marvin Harrison gets a heavy workload in week 2. I think that, it does suck because it probably cost you your week 1 matchup. Your wide receiver 1 getting 1 point. But I expect him to have a pretty big week this coming week. Just because it's like you drafted this guy in the first round, 1 catch, they're hearing it. We're talking about it here on We Talking About Sports. It's around everywhere. So I think the game plan is going to be get him involved early and often.
I like that take, Ben, and I'm there with you on that. But Ron, what are your thoughts on Marvin Harrison Jr.? Are you on the same page as Ben? Bounce back week in week 2 for the rookie, his official coming out party, or does he got to wait a little bit longer for that?
He might be okay just because they're going against the Rams at home again. Kyler Murray seems to be a little bit revived after that knee injury. He was moving around great. I mean, he was scrambling out of the pocket. So I think the options will be there. They're not a team who I think is going to have big leads. So they're going to want to throw the ball around. And that's just the kind of quarterback that Kyler is. Not much love for for Harrison Jr. the third. For me, when it came to drafting, I'm kind of hesitant to take rookie wide receivers. I mean, Puka did it last year, showed out, but that was just a freak of nature year. So not really a big deal for me because I really wasn't on him, for the draft or any hype before
but
that. So.
I guess just for sake of the segment, 1 through 10 on the panic scale, if you were an owner, you not worried or he's good?
I'll say 3.
I don't know, man.
Just because how bad the game was, 3.
I was gonna say 5, just because he has the talent, so you can't be too worried. But at the same time, I mean, it's not like he had 4 for 30 or something. I mean, 1 catch and on 3 targets. It wasn't like he had 5-6 looks.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Ron. And that's the one thing that scares me. And I'll tell you, personally speaking, as a Marvin Harrison Jr. owner, I have him in a couple of leagues. My worry scale, and this is just because the draft capital, you spent a 2nd round pick on him. You're expecting him to be, like Ben said, if you drafted a running back in your 1st round, you're expecting him to give you a wide receiver 1 performance, or at least something close to that, especially if you're drafting him that high. So with that said, I'm worried of around a 6 or a 7, because I just don't want to be stuck with a wide receiver 1 that ends up being a dud. Like, that's the worst thing,
Jackson Smith and the Jigba
trying to overcome, or trying to overcome
shots.
A 2nd round pick in your fantasy draft that ends up being a dud. That's a hard thing to do. I mean, you can survive a couple of things in fantasy, but surviving a 1st or 2nd round pick being a dud, that's hard to do. So, or it just adds like an extra layer to your fantasy season. So I do agree with Ben, though. I think that he has a bounce back in store. And I do think, too, that it was part of the, the strategy to attack the slot. You saw Greg Dortch get a lot of targets against those safeties in the slot. And Wilson got some targets there. He scored a touchdown, I think, for them there in the 1st quarter. And Marvin Harrison Jr., I think, was drawing the coverage of Russell Douglas. So, I mean, I want to shoot him a little bit of bail. I'm going to do that here in week 1. But yeah, definitely not what I expected out of him considering the matchup. I thought it was going to be, good for everybody, but ended up just being good for a few there in that Cardinals offense. On to the next receiver, just keeping it real quick and leading us to the next segment on the injury report is Puka. He was noted with an injury throughout training camp. He had a knee bursitis or something like that. The word is that he re-injured. I don't know if it's the bursitis or a similar knee injury that he had prior, but he pretty much re-aggravated that. They don't know the extent, but he automatically went to the IR after a little bit of consideration there on Tuesday morning. Ron, what are your thoughts on Puka going to the IR? Are you looking to, and we'll get into this later, but how are you dealing with this loss if you're a Puka owner?
I mean, I don't think there's much you can do as a fantasy guy. He wasn't a round 1 or round 2 guy, so you probably have somebody else that you could flex for him. He was probably a flex. Well, I wouldn't say
he
flex.
was a round 2.
He was round 2. He was round 2.
Draft.
Not in mine. Yeah. Well, I got him in our league, and I don't think I got him in the 2nd round. Maybe I did. I don't know. We did go golf that morning, so that draft is a little
hazy.
That wasn't you drafting.
A little hazy. I get you.
I mean, regardless of it, what can you do? There's usually an IR spot in your league, so just stash him there. Hope that he comes back. And with a quarterback like Stafford, you always have an opportunity for him to get hot, and we saw it last year. So there's not much more you can do, man. Just stash him and hope he gets better sooner than later.
Ben, is Cooper Kupp about to, reset some records here this season? He ended the game with 21 targets on Monday night after Puka went down. What's your general thoughts on this injury?
Congratulations, Cooper Kupp owners. 3rd, 4th round pick. Gonna be like, he's 100% gonna finish in the top 10 of receivers with this injury. I mean, minimum 4 weeks.
That's insane.
21 targets,
That's
bro.
insane,
14 catches and a tutty. And like, he showed that he's back. He made a play where they were like, did he get 2 feet down on a drag route or crossing route? So he's back also. It's going to be a big year. Congratulations. I got 0 of Cooper Kupp this year. I'm pissed off about it. If you're trading for him, you're paying like an all-time high. You're paying like if he was drafted in the 1st round. So And I mean, for the people that drafted Puka in the second round, I get that you had to do it just based off where the rankings were, but fuck, bro, amazing rookie season, but damn, you're automatically a second round pick after Cooper Kupp has been doing that for years. Like, he was getting picked before Cooper Kupp, and like I said, I have neither guy, but it's just I thought bad business. The draft value of Puka Nacua and having to take him if you were in the second round.
Yeah, and it's just one of those things, like you just look at it. Puka's he's like 24. Cooper Kupp's going into his age 31 season, been injured a little bit. So, I mean, I see what you're saying though. I mean, Cooper Kupp's tried and proven. I mean, he's the old
it's
reliable.
All Monday, It's all Monday morning quarterbacking, right? After you saw what happened.
For sure. But
I mean, he looked like Cooper Kupp.
For sure. And, the one thing that I am a little worried about is that it's one of those things where they're kind of being held up by like strings pretty much. Like there's not a lot holding the Rams together right now.
I agree.
They lost 2 linemen in that game. If you guys saw their replacement left tackle trying to block Aiden Hutchinson there. I mean, shoot, it's hard for anybody to do that, but much less a backup tackle who wasn't planning on doing that night had to go in and try and do that and cost them, a touchdown there on that end around to Jordan Whittington, the Texas rookie. Almost had his, debut touchdown, but it got taken back. So there's a lot going on with the Rams, but my general take is kind of along with Ben is, Cooper Kupp's going to end up being a smash, especially where you guys were getting them in a draft, but keeping it with the injuries, let's go through it real quick so we can get to the waiver wires and the real reason why we're here. But it's a week 1 injury update. We got to talk about these things because Jake Ferguson, if you spent a pretty decent, penny on him in drafts and mid-round draft pick, he goes down, avoids disaster, just a mild MCL sprain, thinking that he might be able to play on Sunday, but I'm erring on the side that he probably won't. CMC, the scratch hurt around the world right before kickoff pretty much, ends up that he's going to be out, misses. Jordan Mason, a guy who we'll talk about later, ends up filling in and has a career night. Jordan Love, we talked about him. Prognosis 2 to 4 weeks. I've heard 3 to 6. We'll see where he lands on that. And then another tight end, David Njoku, high ankle sprain against the Cowboys. Both starting tight ends in this game got hurt. Njoku's going to be out a little while. Guys, I'll let you take your pick. Obviously, CMC's out there. How are you guys gauging this situation if you're a CMC owner? Are you worried? Or if you have Jordan Mason, obviously you're in a great spot. If you don't have him, if somebody else has him, are you trying to trade for him? What are y'all's thoughts?
Yeah, I'll save it for when we talk about Jordan Mason because he's going to be on the waiver wire. I'll just touch on Ferguson real quick because I have him and I was tuned into that game, saw it happen. Looked a lot worse live. His reaction, like you thought that something was really messed up, not a sprain. You thought that something was torn. I lost him in the league. It's going to suck. I would prefer for him to go to the IR just because playing with one of those injuries is just nagging and stupid. So just take your 4 weeks at the beginning of the season, get right, and then, play it out. But I'm looking for tight end this week on the waiver wire, boys, and we're going to talk about somebody that I'm looking at.
Pause on that last comment there, my boy.
I'm still looking for tight end.
What about you, Ron?
Shit, man, I'm lucky. I guess I must have gotten as lucky as the Bears coming back to survive my Survivor Series pick because I have none of these dudes on my roster. Last year, CMC won me a league, but I wasn't lucky enough to draft him this year, and it looks like I'm doing okay. If you're a CMC owner, what do you do? What do you do if you're just like you're a Puka owner? Except this is he can come back week 2. Latest 100% week 3. And I know Jordan Mason had a great night, but it's CMC. He's not going to get any touches stolen from him, from Mason, especially goal line touches, which is what you want. And all the other stories, it looks like they're, minor injuries that the guys will come back. Even, Love, who's gone for 4 weeks. I didn't have him either. So not huge news for the week 1 injury update because it's not anything season ending for anyone. But regardless, because of fantasy, you have to keep an eye on these stories that we're going to keep bringing you.
For sure. And as we've already talked about with Jordan Love, kind of at length, his weapons around him, they obviously get downgraded a little bit. Josh Jacobs might see an increase in volume. But, I mean, really, what expectations can you have for a team that's going to be led by Malik Willis at quarterback, a guy who I really don't think should be in the NFL. I'm not going to disrespect him, but I mean, it's just not there. So you're going to have to hold your breath if you're going with any of those pass catchers for the Packers. What were you going to say, Ben?
I got offered Josh Jacobs today, and like
Oof.
I just no interest in the Packers offense for at least 2 months, bro.
A couple of weeks, yeah. I mean, hopefully the increased volume ends up well for Josh Jacobs. He doesn't end up, knock on wood, getting hurt himself. But we'll see. Yeah, just got to monitor all these situations, especially the ones that are kind of like day to day, like Jordan Addison. We didn't talk about him, but he injured his other foot, or other ankle, excuse me. So just stuff that you got to monitor throughout the week. All right, now let's get to it. We talked about Jordan Love. If you're one of those guys that drafted Jordan Love, you may already have a backup, but if you don't, this might be the guy for you. Ron talked about him last week on Sunday. It's none other than Baker Mayfield. Talked about them just now. The Bucs came out with that victory against the Commanders. A lot of it was because of the way that Baker Mayfield commanded his offense. 24 of 30, almost touched 300 yards, 4 tuds, 30 points pretty much in fantasy. That's 4-point PPR. Projected this week, 16.5 points going up against that Detroit defense, which looked okay, but Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp are still able to produce some points. He's only owned in 34% of leagues, so there's a good chance that he might be out there for you. If you're talking about Fab, you're trying to replace him for Jordan Love. I mean, you might want to spend a little bit more, but Ben, Ron, what are y'all's thoughts on Baker Mayfield as a waiver wire pickup this week and beyond?
Yeah, I'll go real quick. I think obviously if you're a Jordan Love owner, you got to spend, I would say, a decent amount of fat. I mean, don't overbid yourself, right? But don't also bid $5, $10. I think
you gotta at least put 20, maybe.
You got to make sure that you get him, because he is a guy that you could possibly start for the remainder of the season. So just go ahead and invest in this. Lock in a guy that has weapons and has the capability of throwing 4 touchdowns in a game, like he's already shown. Maybe that's his best game of the season. It could be, right? 4 touchdown games are hard to come by, but he's a guy that can do it, has the weapons. So if you need a quarterback, maybe you got like a Stafford or Goff or Jordan Love. I would go ahead and invest in a guy like Baker Mayfield and add him to the roster for sure.
Nice. And Ron, what do you have to say to add on to what Ben just said? I know you're a big Baker Mayfield guy.
Go get him. Go get this dude right now. This might be the only chance that you have to get him, because if he continues to put up performances like that, he is going to be gone. And get him now, because say you have a standout guy. Say you went and got a CJ Stroud. Say you went and got a Josh Allen. We saw all the rushing that he was, doing on Sunday, rushing quarterbacks as big as he is lead to injuries. A Jalen Hurts kind of guy. We've seen him get hurt. So he's a good quarterback to stash and to get right now, because if your quarterback goes down, you do not want to have to be looking at the waiver wire and seeing guys like Bryce Young, Gardner Minshew, and all those dudes in here when you already have Baker there sitting for you. So, and another thing too, get him now. Who knows? Somebody else could have those quarterbacks and get hurt, and then trade bait, papa, right there. And then the numbers speak for themselves. He almost hit 30 next week. I mean, he's going against Detroit. It could be a high-scoring game. The way Godwin showed out, besides Mike Evans, is what you want to see when you want to get a quarterback like Baker, because his receivers are great. They're great weapons. Running a pass-catching running back, too. I mean, he can scramble from time to time as well. So I'm a lot higher than you guys are on him, of course, like I have been, but drop some fab on this dude.
He was a guy I saw available in just about every league I was in, and I'm in several leagues, so it's not like 34% owned. He's probably available in most of our leagues.
Yeah, I mean, 34% owned. Take it here. You guys said that he's not owned in y'all's leagues. He's owned in one of my leagues, so I mean, one of 3. So there's that 33%. But
I went and got him in 2 out of 3.
Yeah, but I like Baker Mayfield. The only thing I was going to comment on was kind of what Ron touched on at the end, is that he does not have that rushing upside, but the name of their game is to air it out. That this is the way the Bucs are going to survive this year. And I mean, Baker Mayfield, he's proven time and time again that he's capable of producing fantasy wise, especially, scoring touchdowns. And that's what you want to see. He's got a great red zone target and Mike Evans, and they got good rapport. So yeah, I like him as an option. What were you going to say, Ben?
Ron's an obvious yes for Baker finishing as a top 12 quarterback. Roland, what do you think? I mean, this is week 1. You think at the end of the year he finishes as a top 12?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I don't know if it's necessarily gonna, result in them getting a lot of W's, because I still think that, that victory week 1 was a little bit more of a product of the Commanders' defense being terrible. I think they have one of the worst secondaries in the NFL. So I think they're going to be a team that gets picked on. I mean, they were last year. They ranked towards the bottom in terms of a passing defense. So I think this was a little inflated, but needless to say, he's still going to be airing it out a lot. He's still going to find himself in some games where they're going to have to do that to keep up. So yeah, I like Baker Mayfield to finish as a top 12 quarterback for sure. I think he'll finish there fantasy wise, especially with some injuries that have occurred to some guys. We're talking about Jordan Love. That's one guy kind of out of the way. So yeah, I think he'll find himself there for sure.
Possibly playing the best football out of his career right now.
Yeah, and good for him. Props to Baker. All right, let's go a little bit further down the line. Ron alluded to the scenario. What if Baker's not there? You're staring at guys like Danny Dimes. You're staring at Bryce Young. I mean, Sam Darnold is a name that I'm seeing been thrown out there because of his performance against the Giants with the Vikings this past week. Looked pretty good. Shout out to Sam Darnold. But it's Geno Smith. This week got a tough matchup against the New England Patriots. We saw what they did against the Bengals. But this is really more so for the guys that do have Jordan Love. You're looking for a multi-week solution, because after New England, and this is kind of where it lies for me, putting him up here along with him being 14% owned, he plays Miami, Detroit, and the New York Giants in weeks 3, 4, and 5. So to me, that's a good slate of defenses to go up against in terms of passing defense, and good offenses also, where you're going to find Seattle needing to pass the ball and Geno needing to show out. So I like Geno as kind of, a backup option if you need something and there's already people that are on to Baker and have taken him from you and have him stashed, like in one of the leagues that I have going on right now. So yeah, I think Geno, viable candidate. You saw what he did week 1 against the Broncos, looked okay. Passing yards weren't there, but still came through with a passing and a rushing touchdown. So it came through with 18 points. Do you guys, what's y'all's thoughts on Geno? Probably not as high as you guys are on Baker, but just as a candidate going forward as a streamer.
Yeah, I think he'll be there on the bye week. I don't think anybody is no disrespect, but I don't know if anybody's holding up, maybe in deeper leagues, is holding a roster spot for Geno Smith.
No, I mean, he's 14% owned. So
yeah, throughout the season, I think he's a guy that you're going to be able to find there on the bye week. So I'm all right on Geno Smith. Thank you for the Survivor win, on the entry that advanced.
Oh yeah, got it done.
But I'm good on you for fantasy, my guy.
Yeah, same. I'm not really wasting any fab on him. Maybe if you're in a 2-quarterback league, you might want to go get him. But the way DK performed, I mean, yeah, he was going against Surtain, but DK didn't have a great week. The little shot was thrown on Jackson Smith and Jigba. Tyler Lockett is, I don't know what the hell happened to him, but just not a lot of weapons for him either, man. And
he has weapons. It's father time with Lockett.
But I mean, he has weapons. But
I mean, Lockett led the team in receiving, I think. So I mean, it's there. I mean, it's just it's one of those games.
They got weapons because they were down at the goal line a lot.
The other thing is too, Kenny Walker is a monster. So once they get into the 20, the 25, the winning zone, they're giving it to Kenny Walker, and that's probably going to be the main cap on all these guys' ceilings. Kenny Walker's just a monster. So
he doesn't weapons isn't like he doesn't have a Debo out there. He doesn't have a JJ. I mean, DK's a big physical dude, but his hands aren't the best. So that's just what I mean. Guys who can go create, get that yak. So
we'll see. Just keep his name tucked in, like Ben said. He's a guy that you'll probably be able to see available, noted by his 14% availability right now. Probably will be available throughout the year, and like I said, has some favorable matchups. So
Stroud and Tua,
keep his name in mind. What's up?
Stroud and Tua put up like 18 points. So I mean, I guess you could say after we.
Yeah, and I mean, passing was just down across the league in general. There's a bunch of guys that finished with under 200 yards, and a guy that finished with under 100 yards. His name's Caleb Williams. So, anyways, let's just go on to the next guy here. We talked about him. Honestly, he's owned in a bunch of leagues that I'm in already, but looking at his ownership, here, he's still out there, and it's just worth a discussion because of what's going on with CMC. None other than Jordan Mason. He filled in for CMC on what we all thought was short notice. According to Jordan Mason, he knew since Friday. Neither here nor there. He still filled in, and as you can tell by the stat lines here, completely tore it up. I don't know. It's just a Shanahan run scheme. I mean, it's been going on for 40 plus years, and they just plug in a guy and he goes for damn near 150 almost every single time. 28, 147 and a tud, 24 fantasy points. Only had one catch for 5 yards. So it was just pure running. Props to Jordan Mason for filling in. Finds himself going up against the Minnesota defense. They fared pretty well in week 1, but that was against the Giants. So take that ranking with a grain of salt, but they're 5th. And as you can tell by the projections, ESPN's accounting for CMC to come back. We don't know if that's the case. I think it's more 70% that he does not play, 30% that he does play week 2, based on what I'm hearing currently. How are y'all playing this situation? Any way y'all want to slice it. If you have CMC and you have Jordan Mason, I don't think you need to talk about that because it's pretty obvious. You just wait to the last minute and whoever's starting, you kind of put that with your lineup. But if you're trying to pick up Jordan Mason, how much fab do you spend on him? If you're trying to trade for him because somebody sniped you, because in most of my leagues, the CMC owner does not have Jordan Mason. So there's a lot of those situations going on out there. What do y'all's thoughts on Jordan Mason?
I think that if you're a CMC owner, you need to do whatever you got to do. I don't mean trade your first round pick to get Jordan Mason, but you need to throw out a good package to secure a handcuff, because that's one of the bigger handcuffs in the league. And it's one of the handcuffs that if this guy plays, obviously you alluded to, it doesn't matter who they plug in there. That could take us to a conversation of should they have paid CMC. We know the Niners are paying everybody, and Brock Purdy's coming up next year, and who knows what decision they're going to make with that. But if you can just plug a guy in here, they said Friday before the game, and come up with numbers like this, feed the guy 28 times. Shit, this guy's probably not even making, $2 million this season, if I had to take a guess.
Making under $1 million. They already showed us his contract.
There you go.
I think CMC made more on Sunday than he will this whole year. So
yeah. That's another discussion for the 49ers front office, and all the money that they're spending. But if you're a CMC owner, you got to do whatever you got to do to get Jordan Mason on your team. If he's out there and it's a fab league, I'm dumping 50%, bro. I know it's week 1, but I got CMC and I need that handcuff. If I don't have to trade any players and all I have to do is waste fab, to secure the handcuff of my number 1 or number 2 overall pick, wherever he might have been taken, you got to do it. And if I don't own CMC, I'm not too interested, because I don't want to be playing that game. I don't want to have that roster spot. And like you said, they're saying CMC's already coming back. I'm not interested in playing that game. But if I'm the CMC owner, I'm on the phone, baby. I'm on the phone.
Ron, Ben noted fab. He said he'd go to 50%. Would you go over 50% if you're trying to get a Jordan Mason? And the reason why I'm asking, and I want to ask Ben the same question, is even with this situation, are you worried about spending too much fab on a temporary solution? If CMC does not hit the IR, if he does come back week 2 and, is good the rest of the way, a lot of it depends on if you have CMC or not. But let's just focus on if you do have CMC. Are you getting him just for the chance of re-injury?
If for sure, and because you don't know what's going to happen week 2. The good thing is right now they haven't ruled CMC out for week 2. So if it's somebody that doesn't have CMC, do you think that they're going to risk half of their fab, for a guy in Mason that CMC might be coming back next week? I think half is enough.
You're probably competing, hopefully, with yourself at that point. Yeah. But I don't know. Ron, what are your thoughts here?
Shit. It's tough because the kid absolutely showed out. So, he has the performance to do it. It's not like, hey, we plugged this. It's like was it like the Ford from the Browns when Chubb went out and then everybody was on like their fab to go get Ford last year?
Yep.
And then I think the same thing happened with A-Chain. I don't know if anybody got hurt, and those two are models that you can go off of that prove to work out. And a lot of the times, man, it does work out. I don't know if it's possible if this can happen, but could you even see him getting traded throughout the year? No, right? Because he's already on the roster.
Yeah, they
with
need him.
They can't do that, right?
And they need him too. Yeah, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no. It's just if I'm a CMC owner, I don't know if I still drop that much because you're essentially giving away your first round pick, right? Obviously, you went to get CMC, and you're dropping all your fab in week 2.
Not all of it, just half.
Yeah, that's a good amount, man.
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably, just for the sake of the segment, I'm erring on the side of Ben, dropping at least 50%. If you're the CMC owner, you don't have Jordan Mason, you don't know what's going to happen. It's a tough injury. I hate when you hear the word Achilles or just any lower body injury in general, and he's trying to go through it. It's been going on since the summer in camp. They downplayed it. I mean, I was reading reports up until like Thursday that CMC was ready to take a full workload. And then it comes that, he's not playing on Monday night. So it's just one of those things, like what truly is going on. You really can't take the words of the coach at face value anymore, because they're probably being deceptive. So just to play it safe, and in the event that you are without your first round pick for multiple weeks, you kind of do have to drop 50% or more if you are a CMC owner. If not, like I'm on the side of Ron, you probably shouldn't be wasting your time, because it might be like a 1 to 2 week kind of pop, right? And then you're kind of left with half of your gunpowder for the rest of the year, and you're kind of left in a bad spot. So yeah, just an interesting situation all around. What do y'all's thoughts, real quick, while you're here, on the his comments about the Friday night, or knowing Friday that he was going to play over CMC?
And then I think that it was true. Obviously, he said it right away. He had to have known since then, bro. Like, why is he just gonna throw out Friday randomly? The Niners tried to clean it up, obviously for the league's sake and having to report injuries and whatnot. We know that teams are doing this, trying to keep their cards as close to their vest as they can. But then they asked him about it again in his post-game interview, and he's like, this is why I don't really like the media. And it's like, at the same time, like, hey, bro, you got the interview with ESPN right after the game when it ended. You know what I mean? Like, this.
Yeah, he's in an emotional state. He just had a career game. So
I don't think that he was supposed. I don't think that at the same time, maybe that's not information you're going to give out, but you also don't think, like, you're not thinking in the moment, like, oh, this might get my team in trouble and get
exactly. Yeah, he's in the moment. Yeah, for sure. Ron, fair or foul on these teams trying to keep the injury close to the vest, or with betting and fantasy involved?
For Monday night, that's dirty, bro.
Should we have known sooner, Ron? What are your thoughts here?
That's dirty.
I mean, I would do the same thing. I ain't gonna tell y'all that my players are hurt. I'm not gonna let y'all go.
Yeah,
game
the
plan.
strategy.
You know what I mean? If the Jets knew that CMC was out, shit, what the hell are you gonna think they'd do? Change their defensive scheme, drop back because the running back is not gonna kill us. Either way, they got completely blasted. But
yeah, true.
I'm actually gonna change my opinion real quick because you guys convinced me. I would drop my fab because I'm not a guy who does it often, and I'm thinking about the position here. Wide receivers, sure. There's plenty of wide receivers to go around. You can still go land somebody solid. Quarterbacks, same thing. But to go get a solid running back who just put up 24 fantasy points in his debut for a guy who they're going to protect as well. If CMC's 50%, 60%, he ain't playing. Or maybe he has we see it in the media, a limited snap count or some shit like that, right? So
sure. I could see him getting work even with CMC back.
Exactly. To where San Francisco says, "Hey,
not enough to start him, but
we didn't say he wasn't going to play. He played, albeit a series or two, or they can say, oh, he injured it mid-game, and sit him the whole second half. So you know what? I am dropping fab. I'm changing my mind. Go out and get this guy.
There we go. It's a consensus. If he's out there, there's a chance that he might be in y'all's leagues. 37% leads me to believe that he might be out there. Go ahead and try and get him. Might be worth it, even if it's just for a couple weeks. But yeah, those Achilles kind of scary. Ben talked about it earlier. If you're playing the game of revolving tight end like some of us, you punted on tight end in your leagues, and really just in general, I think the tight end position was down in week 1. There wasn't a lot of big performances from the position, but one guy that had a great performance was none other than Mark Andrews, his supposed understudy, he had a great performance. He outperformed the teacher. Student beat the teacher here. 9 receptions, 12 targets, 111 yards, 1 touchdown in their loss, put up 26 fantasy points, almost had 2 touchdowns. If it weren't for his big toe, shout out KD, but his big toe there landed on the back of the end zone there on the white stripe to be called out of bounds there. Ended up losing the game for the Ravens. But week 2 matchup, pretty favorable there against the Raiders. They gave up some love there to the receiving options of the Chargers this past week. His projections, though, and it's kind of where I want to stay. It's 3 receptions, 5 targets, 38 yards, 9 fantasy points. He's only owned in 10% of leagues. Ben, you talked about it earlier, so I'm going to throw it to you first. Is this performance sticky? Are you on the side that, Isaiah Likely is here to stay, or do you think it was kind of a pop? They were behind. They needed to throw the ball a lot. Mark Andrews is still kind of coming back from that car crash. What are your thoughts on Isaiah Likely going forward?
I think this could have been his best game of the season, 100%. But for a tight end, 9 receptions, 100. This is 26, 27 points for a tight end. That's a lot. I think with tight end, if you get 10, I think that you're happy. For a guy like Likely with the lack of receivers, we saw Zay Flowers getting a lot of targets either behind the line of scrimmage or within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, real gadget-like. Yeah.
Exactly. Terrible targets. But Likely, at worst, I'll still give Mark Andrews the benefit of the doubt just because of the career that he's had with the Ravens based off where he was drafted. And, he is the reason that Isaiah Likely's only 9% owned, right, because of Mark Andrews. But let's be real. The wide receiver room sucks there. Isaiah Likely is a third option at worst, if not second option by this point. So the third option, a tight end who's on the field, his snap count was really high. There was times where he was on the field and Mark Andrews wasn't, right? I would expect them to at least both be on the field. But I feel like the third option at worst, possibly second option for a team like the Ravens, Lamar loves going to him. 12 targets is a lot of targets. I had Jake Ferguson. There was another league where I completely punted on tight end and got Pat Freiermuth. I'll be spending tonight, boys. I think that Isaiah Likely is here to stay just based off the wide receiver room and the fact that they are a bigger team. They like to pound the ball. 2 tight end sets are very common for them just based off the way their offense goes.
How much
Isaiah Likely will be on the field a lot, regardless if Mark Andrews comes back to form or not.
And how much fab are you thinking to close off your point?
I'm thinking if you really need I really need a tight end.
Yeah, it all depends on your situation.
Yeah, I really need a tight end. So I'm spending, at least a quarter on tight end. At least a quarter. Not I'm a quarter like as in 0.25, 25 cents. So give me, 25 on Likely. I hope that takes it. A lot of these leagues have $200 a fab. I think that 25 on a position like tight end is a little bit steep, especially if you already have a tight end and this is only going to be your backup.
You're $25 on a 200 scale, so you're talking 10% though for guys that are playing like on $100.
Yeah, I'm at 10%, and I'm hoping I don't get outbid. Like I said,
okay, so 10%.
I punted on tight end, so I think that 10% is a lot for a guy that has Mark Andrews still ahead of him.
For sure, good point, Ron. What are your thoughts on the Baltimore Ravens tight end here?
I'm gonna kick it off with Alan's comment. Alan, thanks for joining us, bro. You're always here kicking it with us. He says, "Do y'all feel like the targets may fall as they try to incorporate the run more with Henry?" I'm gonna say no, because I think that even though Henry didn't run a lot in that game, I think that teams are just gonna be ready for it. They're going to be ready to stack the box because not only Henry runs, Lamar runs as well. So you have to have that spy. I think that they stack the box a little bit, just my opinion. So I don't know how heavy Derrick Henry is going to be in this offense. Yes, he's a big upgrade from the guys that he had last year. But like Ben said it best, Likely is your third best option here. And I'm going to kick it off with what he did last year at the end. I'm looking up his stats here. In the last 5 regular season games, he had 5 touchdowns. He caught a little bit of fire there toward the end. Even against the Texans the first round, he caught a TD. He didn't do very well against Kansas City when they got eliminated. But once you have that connection, man, I think it's kind of hard to break. Fucking Flowers got targeted, just like Ben said, and after a while, he's either going to get tired or he's just not going to get open. And Mark Andrews, hey, we've seen tight ends fall a lot faster than wide receivers have off of the totem pole. Hey, if you're not doing it for your team, you're not going to get looked, especially as a tight end. And that gets me to that position. I have Kelsey completely busted for me. He didn't do shit. There wasn't, I don't know how Laporta did, but I don't think he did very well this week. So if you can go land somebody like this off of a waiver, off of 9%, I mean, it happened last year. I hate to bring it up, but we saw what McBride did with the Cardinals at the end of the year. Guy came out of nowhere and he was killing it at the end of the year. He had some good weeks. He put some good weeks together for you. Go get Likely. It's not a bad option to have it at 9%. He's going to be there. If your other tight ends bust, you got this dude right here.
Yeah. Great points by both of you guys. And for me, with Likely, a couple things here. I think he's going to be a guy that's moved around the field a lot. He's not going to play exclusively in that tight end position. And to that point, a lot of his production did come with Mark Andrews on the field. So that's, one point there to look at and say, he doesn't necessarily have to, usurp Mark Andrews and take him off the field. They can be on the field together in the offseason. Likely was, heard as saying that he was asked to, kind of study every position in terms of lining up as a wide receiver because they plan to use him that way. That he's that kind of athlete. If you guys saw him on that breakaway touchdown, he is that kind of a guy. And getting to Allen's comment and just kind of to pump the brakes a little bit, and I think a little bit on the reason why he's projected to only get 9 points is. I think a lot of, not because of Henry, is it going to slow down, but I just don't think they're going to find themselves in a lot of games like they were in with the Chiefs. I mean, that was a kind of a shootout game for them. I heard something today, out of their next 16 games, they're favored in 14 of them. So they might, be in those situations where they're running Henry a little bit more, and he's not going to get those 12 targets. So I don't think he's going to necessarily do 26 points over and over again. I think Ben said it best. This might have been his best game, but depending on your need, I still think he's a good target. And I'm a guy that punted on tight end. I ran Taysom Hill last week in my tight end position. So I'll probably be spending on Likely. And in terms of fab, I'm probably going, 15 to 20 just to make sure that I get him. And because I like what Ben said, and I'm of the same thought process. If you just stack up their receivers and their weapons, he probably is tied with Mark Andrews or right below Mark Andrews. It's, Flowers, Andrews, and then Likely. I mean, he's better than Bateman. He's better than whoever else they have. I mean, Justice Hill, their running back, as a target. So yeah,
and then take it to red zone targets.
Yeah, no,
where he's over Zay Flowers.
Exactly. Yeah, it's him and Mark Andrews. So I like Isaiah Likely as a prospect going forward for sure. Let's get to the next one.
Be a bidding war for Likely.
For sure. All right, this next one, if you lost a guy like Puka, you need a receivers, you're kind of looking for a flex start here or there. This guy's only owned in 30% of leagues, so he's still out there. He's part of a good offense. It's none other than Brandon Cooks, another guy who just still ends up being around. Scored a touchdown this past week, ended up with 14.5 fantasy points. Goes up against the New Orleans Saints this past week. We saw what they did against the Panthers, but the Cowboys, a different story there. Projected for 10 points. Guys, he had 7 targets. We talked about it in the beginning of the season with CD. There's really no other target competition outside of Brandon Cooks. And Jake Ferguson goes down. What are y'all's thoughts on Brandon Cooks?
Not too much for me on Brandon Cooks. I mean, I'll give Dak all the credit on that touchdown pass he threw to the spot. And, Brandon Cooks just ended up being there when he threw the ball. And where Brandon Cooks was in his route was very impressive to see the final product of that. I mean, that was a great touchdown, 0 coverage. He saw it, but, it's CeeDee Lamb. Now with Ferguson hurt, maybe Brandon Cooks is the second best target. He's been a guy that's found himself to be relevant, just by scoring those touchdowns. When he's healthy, he's pretty productive. I'm somebody who really invested in wide receiver. I know this isn't about my fantasy teams, but unless you're in a very deep league, I don't think that you're really looking at a guy like Brandon Cooks, but, he is a decent bye-week filler. Maybe you want a bench spot. If, you had maybe on your bench, you had guys like Palmer or any of the Chargers receivers besides Ladd McConkey. I mean, with Ferguson out, Brandon Cooks might be a decent ad. I don't think that you're looking to play this guy until you get a bye week, though.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Bron, did you give your thoughts? I had to dip away a little bit.
No. I'm totally on this dude. You need to go get Brandon Cooks right now. You need to go get him because we saw the running game in Dallas and Zeke lost a little bit of weight. Guess he wasn't eating as much.
Or in that 15, looks slimmer.
That running game is not going to move the ball in Dallas. What's going to move the ball is Dak and his wide receivers. One less target in Ferguson. So Cooks automatically steps up to me even higher. And he's to Ben's point, he's a solid dude. He's a smaller guy, but he has hands. You don't see too many drops. And when he was in Houston, he was a great player, just didn't have a great quarterback. All right. So he's a little bit of a veteran in the game, knows where he needs to be, finds those pockets in the zone. He's going to give Dak a security blanket and go get Brandon Cooks right now because Dak will be looking for him because all the attention will be going to CD. You know me, I'm high on wide receiver twos. This is a definition of a wide receiver two. He doesn't bitch. He doesn't complain. I don't know if he's been too injury prone either. Great wide receiver two.
Had a couple concussions, Mike Will, but he's good for sure.
Mike Will, from the Chargers night with the Jets, always hurt. Great wide receiver two. T. Higgins, wide receiver two, always hurt, always complaining.
Early in his career, Cooks was hurt. Now he's gotten better.
There you go. So all those points, go get Brandon Cooks from the Dallas Cowboys on your waiver wire. 29%, it's going to be tough, but he still might be there.
I mean, you always want to be a part of a good offense, right? You always want to try and get a piece of a good offense. And I think Brandon Cooks, that's the main part for me here. He's a part of a good offense, not a lot of target competition outside of CeeDee Lamb, who is, he was a wide receiver one in drafts this year. But yeah, Brandon Cooks fills in nicely there. I know they were expecting some stuff out of some other guys like Tolbert, but until that stuff happens, Brandon Cooks is the guy. So if you don't have him, he's available out there. You might be able to get away getting him with no competition. Who knows what the temperature is on Brandon Cooks, but I think he's a guy that you can fill in, like Ben said. If you have some bye weeks going on, he's more than trustworthy, I think, to throw in as a flex down the line. And that's the thing about fantasy, especially these season-long leagues. You're not playing, DraftKings and stuff. You always got to be, trying to make your team a little bit better, or just trying to, manage your bench, try and look for something there. So if you're not planning it for this week, maybe you might need him down the line. But Brandon Cooks, there's worse things you can do out there on the waiver wire. All right, let's get to the next one. This one directly affected by the Puka Nacua injury is none other than the former Kansas City Chief himself, Demarcus Robinson, vertical threat. Week 1 line, 4 catches, 7 targets, 42 yards. I think he had a touchdown called back, so almost, had a good week. 8.2 fantasy points if you're playing full PPR. Has a great matchup this week against Arizona. We saw what the Bills were able to do. We're, kind of slinging that around, and Josh Allen had his way. Projected to have a decent week at 10 fantasy points, 6 targets. He's going to be a part of this offense. He's not going to get the 21 targets that Cooper Kupp got, but at 15% fantasy owned, think he's a good fantasy option just because he's going to get 4 weeks of increased run, you would think, with no Puka there. The other guy is Tyler Johnson, who we talked about offline. But yeah, guys, what are y'all's thoughts on Demarcus Robinson? Is he worth a flyer to y'all? Do you think he's going to produce in this role?
I don't got much here. I think that, we saw 21 targets for Cooper Kupp.
Yeah.
We've seen this, like with Tutu Atwell last year, and it's just
he popped a couple weeks. I mean,
yeah, I'm just not down to play that game.
That's my thing. I mean, if it's a need, it's a need-based thing. It's all based on your roster. It's all based on what's going on there. If you're a guy that lost Puka, and you don't have another option, why not try and pick up Demarcus Robinson? Or if you do have another option, pick him up, keep him on your bench for a week. I think he should be owned on rosters as it stands today because Puka's out for the next 4 weeks. Who knows how much longer he's going to be out? He is the vertical threat. He is the guy that's going to blow the top off the offense. If anybody is, we know Cooper Kupp, the role that he plays, what he does. He moves the chains, gets you up and down the field. But Demarcus Robinson's a guy who can do it in 1 or 2 plays. So I do think he's viable. Personally, I gonna try and add him. I might, try and stash him, see what goes on this next week, see what happens with Matt Stafford. They're gonna sling it. We know what's gonna happen with that offensive line, not gonna be able to get a lot of push running the ball. So yeah, I think it's a decent look at a flex, as Luis is here saying. Shout out Luis for being here with us. Almost half an hour past 9. So Ron, what's your thoughts on Demarcus Robinson, real quick?
Had another Rams receiver by the name of Colby Parkinson. I think he's got a little bit more
tight end.
I'm sorry. Another pass catcher. Sorry, I haven't been wide receiver than that. Yeah, Colby Parkinson to me is maybe somebody who you would get a little bit more of a look at if you want to target anybody with the Rams. But hey, I'll take your advice, Roland. If I have somebody who's just hurt or who I know is not going to play, hey, I'll take him off my roster, put this guy on, and I can say, hey, Roland from We Talking About Sports, put me on Demarcus Robinson.
There we go. All right,
you already put us on Dortch, so you went.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about Dortch here, and along with some other long shots that are mentioned by Luis. Shout out Luis with the question here. Greg Dortch, long shot for deeper leagues. We'll get to Luis right here. Week 1 line, 6 catches, 8 targets, 47 yards, and didn't get a touchdown. That's an error there. He only had 11 fantasy points. Disregard that touchdown. Week 2 matchup against the Rams, 19th. I just have him up here. I think he's a stash. There's a lot worse things you can do with a flyer at flex and PPR leagues, only owned in 1.6% of leagues as bye weeks start to creep up on you. I think Greg Dortch is a good option. And to get to Luis before Ben and Ron give their thoughts, toss up between Cooks and Robinson. I agree, although I would go with Cooks. Giants receivers outside of Neighbors, Wan'Dale Robinson, and then we'll get to maybe Alan Lazard. Y'all, what are y'all's thoughts on Greg Dortch, deep league flyer, and then give y'all's thoughts on Luis's question?
Yeah, I mean, if you're in a full point PPR deep league flyer, like you said, he's not going to be a touchdown guy just because of how small he is. I mean, it seems like everybody's small on that damn Cardinals offense for the most part. Bunch of fucking little league football players and shit. Luis is a coach, so that the Cardinals quarterback and Greg Dortch are about the size of Luis's football team that he coaches. I think he's a coach out in La Jolla. But no, I bought in on Kyler. I think that he's going to spread it out. We talked about Marvin Harrison Jr. a little bit. They got McBride at tight end. They got guys to spread it out. It's going to come down to, can Kyler see over the line and get it to these guys? But Dortch is definitely, a third, fourth option. I would say at worst behind McBride and Marvin Harrison. Then you got Wilson and Dortch. So toss up between those two guys. We saw Wilson get the touchdown. Dortch get more of the receptions. These guys are definitely faster, Luis, but they're the same size. Your guys got more heart, though. I believe that. But yeah, Dortch is a stash, I would say, in deeper leagues. Cardinals are going to be playing from behind. We know Kyler will throw it up. And Greg Dortch, like we said again, great call, Roland. You had Dortch week 1 and seemed to be a little safety blanket for Kyler.
What's your thoughts on this long shot, Ron? What are y'all thinking about Greg Dortch?
Unfortunately, I'm going to have to stay off on this one, boys. I'm not going to ride the train with y'all because of the Terminator back there in the backfield, Mr. James Conner. He absolutely did well. I think they're going to feed him the ball a little bit more, and the backup running back did well as too. Too many targets over there for Kyler Murray. He also ran the ball a lot. He scrambled in several plays.
Yep.
Not that they were, designed play calls for him, but if he sees something he doesn't like, he's going to tuck it and run, which takes away opportunity from his receivers. So I'm going to hit the brakes a little bit on Dortch. To answer Luis's question, before I do, how does it go? Because is it chile, tomate, cebolla, va a ganar La Jolla or something like that? Nadie le gana La Jolla. Luis, thanks for joining us, bro. We appreciate it, man. I would, to answer your question between Cooks and Robinson, I'm going Cooks all day. That's a clear choice for me. Staying away from any Giants wide receiver, even with their QB1, Danny Dimes. All right, and the Jets wide receivers, it looks like Garrett Wilson was getting force-fed. It was the Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall show. If anything, there is a little bit of connection to there with Lazard. So maybe Lazard did get a touchdown. I didn't even think about him. He got 2, so I didn't even think about him. He didn't cross my mind, but he should have definitely been on my list, or if not the podcast list for the waiver wire. I just don't know how much he's owned.
Well, Cobb is not in the league anymore, so Lazard's the guy that's just going to follow Rodgers around.
And that's the thing with me putting Greg Dortch on this list. I didn't want to put all these guys on here because I'm trying to be mindful of our time as we are creeping up over an hour. But this is, if not for anything else, just to keep them in the back of your mind, because it always happens. Injuries happen throughout the year. You're gonna find yourself at some point this season looking for a dude to plug in your flex. And I'm telling you, Greg Dortch will probably be there. The Cardinals are going to be down in a bunch of their games. They're going to be throwing. They're going to be slinging. Kyler Murray's going to throw it over 40 times a couple times this year. Greg Dortch has been known to earn targets when he's on the field. So I think it's a good option. But, on that same note, and I did want to get to these guys. I'm glad Luis asked this question. But a couple guys that I had written down didn't make the list. Honorable mention. Wan'Dale Robinson, a receiver for the New York Giants. That's one of the guys there that Luis is talking about. He had 12 targets. He had 12 targets on Sunday. Ended the game with only 11 points, and that's because he's that shallow route guy. He's the guy that's going to be running the drags. He's a super speedy guy, can do something with that. And yeah, I go Neighbors over Dortch all day too. But Wan'Dale Robinson, I mean, if you're in a pinch again, this guy's only owned in 6% of leagues, projected to get 10 points this week. Alan Lazard, as Ron said, his ownership is less than 1%. He's only owned in 0.9% of leagues on ESPN. So, I mean, you can go out and get him. I mean, again, if you're hurting for a flex, the season is just getting underway, but believe me, these injuries are going to happen.
I'm going to go get him.
Knock on wood, don't happen to your guy. But Lazard, he's a dude, proven rapport with Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers trusts him, even though he drops the ball, although not at the rate of MVS. But Lazard, a guy there that's proven. Another guy that I wanted to mention, this is a real, I think, deeper league stash. Let's see how the guy progresses throughout the year. Jalen McMillan, he's the third receiver for the Buccaneers. It's Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and Jalen McMillan. McMillan, he's a guy, he beat out Trey Palmer. I was struggling for his name earlier today. He beat out Trey Palmer. He's the third receiver. He scored a touchdown against the Commanders. Perfect little route there. I think it's a corner route. He's a rookie wide receiver out of Washington. He's only owned in 3% of leagues. Any of those names catch y'all's attention? Anything that you might want to dabble with or keep your ear to as we go down the season?
Yeah, for the Giants, I mean, I have a couple of neighbor stocks. I mean, it's tough. We thought week one, when we talk about those targets, I know you mentioned like Wilson's targets, and we've mentioned it on shows before with quarterbacks. Like, they're not the best targets.
Are they catchable targets?
Yeah, exactly. From Daniel Wilson, man, those targets are coming from like a Palmview quarterback, JV Palmview.
Hey, shout out to Wattis Lincoln. I came up on a clip that they broke a 5-year losing streak this past year. They hadn't won a game since 2019. I think that's what I saw. Luis said, you know more than I do. Correct me, please. But shout out to them.
He's probably like, we beat their ass once a year at least. No, but yeah, these guys are a little too deep with Wilson. I mean, Lazard is a guy who, Ron. I saw Ron break out the pen and write the name down, I think that he is going to go and get him. But I'm good.
Yeah, I like Lazard. I mean, again, this is all dependent on your team. I don't think I'm personally in a position to make any of those moves, but they're just dudes to keep around. Like, I think Wan'Dale, just the amount of targets that he gets, the Giants are going to lose some games. He might be a guy that finds himself having a couple of games here or there. But yeah, I mean, those are the waiver wire guys for this week. It's only week 2. But I mean, it's useful to have this show early on because, I mean, look what happened last year with Puka. Puka we were adding him this week. Last year, it was Puka. People were trying to go for him. I believe it was this week. So just a little recap of the guys that we have up here for those of y'all that are just joining us. Shout out to everybody that's been here. Baker Mayfield, quarterback, if you have like a dude like Jordan Love or just need an upgrade at the quarterback position. Geno Smith, another dude to keep in mind later on down the line. Jordan Mason, obvious replacement for CMC if he's out. Isaiah Likely, tight end help. Brandon Cooks, little flex help if you're in need or just down the line again, a nice little stash. Demarcus Robinson for those affected by Puka. and then a long shot for those of you guys that are in 12 or 14 team leagues. Greg Dortch, boys, thoughts on the waiver wire this week in general? Kind of light. I know Ben, you're dabbling for tight end. What are your thoughts going forward? You need to pay attention to this throughout the year, right? You just don't win the league in the draft.
Nah, and I honestly, like I said, man, just based off where Likely is, I think he's kind of a guy that you can just start him and forget it. Just based off his athleticism, like you said, the ways they're going to use him. So, I do think that Likely is the standout of here, unless you're a CMC owner. But I think that here with Likely at tight end, you got a guy that you see can put up these big. He's not the guy that's there to block. Will he do it? Yes, because on the Ravens, I think you just need to be able to do that to get on the field. But he's the guy there to get touchdowns and make the plays. So I like Likely a lot. Luis says Baker or Daniels. I'm on the Daniels train. We talked about Baker not having any rushing upside. He's probably going to have more passing touchdowns than Daniels, 100%. But the rushing yards that Daniels is getting and just the games that he's going to be saved, when he throws maybe a pick or two by those rushing yards, you got to love Daniels right now.
What about you, Ron? What thoughts on the waiver wire this week and going forward? Do you play the waiver wire a lot?
Hell yeah. Nah, sometimes when I remember and I'm not too too messed up from the weekend or anything. But real quick on Baker Daniels, Luis, you already know, bro. Baker all day. Go get him. All right, Daniels, he's a great quarterback. He can run, but what happens to those rookie quarterbacks? Happened to CJ Stroud last year. They're going to get hurt. This ain't college. You're getting hit by grown men. You're getting hit by grown men, and it hurts a lot more, and you're going to want to stop running. You're going to want to start sliding. So for the length of your fantasy football season, you're going to want to go with the guy, to me, that has a little bit more longevity. Give me Baker over Daniels. I think I had a slide for defenses. If you stream,
yeah, that's right.
You're good, because I don't have a lot of stats. It's just if you stream defenses and you punt, these are two defenses this week. 5% owned. It's just the teams that they're playing against, boys. The Panthers got absolutely blown out 100%. By the Saints defense. If you had the Saints defense this week, you probably won, because I think they put up 18, 19 damn points. So 5% owned against Carolina. We have the Chargers, and then you have the Colts, 2%. They kept it tight. They kept the game close with CJ Stroud and the Texans. And Malik Willis, you guys said he shouldn't even be in the league. They are going to Green Bay, but regardless of it, these are two defenses who are going against the worst team in the league and the worst quarterback in the league, possibly. So keep your eye out if you have to force a defense for this weekend.
Yeah, I like that Chargers pick. Definitely a team I'm going to be paying attention to, because I do have a revolving door at defense. I'm not a guy that spends early on defense. I'll definitely be looking at these teams. And to answer Luis's question and break the tie here, I'll go with Daniels. I like his rushing upside. Think he's decent enough as a passer to get it done and keep you relevant the whole year. I think he has a chance too of finishing as a quarterback one with his rushing upside. So definitely like what I saw from him. Just needs to keep the helmet on. Kept popping off, throughout the game. A little scary there. Cost himself a touchdown, although he got it later on in that same drive. But still, got to keep that helmet on. I like Jaden Daniels, a great prospect. Should be a good quarterback there for the Commanders. But yeah, great slide here, Ron, with the defense, because it is important if you do play in leagues that have a defense, because I had the Bears defense this week, and they played against Will Levis and the Titans, and Will Levis absolutely just gave the game to the Bears. I think the coach said we would have been fine punting the whole second half instead of, just going and trying to play offense or just, playing defense the whole time.
That's foul to say, bro.
Yeah, Brian Callahan, the new coach there in Tennessee, didn't draft Will Levis, so that has no ties to him. So yeah, not a lot going on there in Tennessee, but yeah, defense can make or break your league or make or break your week. And I mean, kicker too. We don't have a slide for kickers, but you saw Jake Moody put up 26. Aubrey almost scored 30. Boswell went off too for the Steelers. So yeah, kickers. Ron, you want to take this question from Luis?
Sure. Louis, we'll be on Sundays for sure at 10 in the morning, around 10. We try to get all the information in before kickoff, and then we do the waiver wire shows on Tuesdays. And then throughout the week, we're always posting on social media. So if you aren't already, go follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and we'll put news up there. We have the Tyreek Hill video up there of him getting arrested. And then we'll go back, and we do keep receipts. We hit some bets this weekend that we haven't gone over. Ben hit a good must start for the very first game of the season, so we have the must starts as well. So follow us on our socials, and we'll put up our schedule on there. But pretty much, man, Sundays and Tuesdays, you'll catch us on.
Yeah, Sundays and Tuesdays for sure. And then, I mean, if you're interested, I mean, we also do stuff with UFC. I know throw out some NCAA football or college football every once in a while. Try and get that more active. So yeah, we're going to be on a lot more here as the football season progresses. And we got a good UFC event. Close with that. UFC Noche is this week. They're at the Sphere on Sunday. Hopefully we'll do a little UFC pod. Sean O'Malley versus Marab should be a good fight. Guys, any last thoughts for us here on Tuesday before we get out?
No,
I'm good, man. Thanks everybody for watching. Catch us on Sunday.